Well, how long do you keep your emails? Have you ever given an email out on Gmail, 5 years ago, and you're still there? You can find it in a search. Well, obviously, you're not a government official, because in government, apparently that doesn't happen. To tell us a story from Complete Colorado, our good friend, Todd Shepard. Good to see you.
Hey, John. Thanks for having me back on the show.
One of the ace reporters from Complete, Michael Sandoval. Thanks for being here.
John.
All right, now you did an incredible story on an EPA director, Jim Martin, and some of the emails that were discovered. But before we set that, I want to talk a little Lois Lerner, just to give it some context. Lois has no emails. The IRS director, there's no emails. I can't get rid of an email. You think about if you get an email, you delete it or you answer it, it's there on their server, it's in your inbox, it's in your outbox, it's to whomever you sent it to, but somehow Lois Lerner can't find her emails. They've been destroyed. Have they? Conjecture for me.
Yeah, what we've seen in the IRS thing is how many redundancies there are. You have the hard drive redundancy first, then you've got backup tapes, then the server, and even though it's deleted, sometimes what deleted really means is it's been de-indexed, which means there's no information pointing you to where that information resides on the hard drive anymore. So the email itself may still exist, it's just the pointers aren't saying, oh, here it is. And it'll stay on that hard drive until new information comes and is overwritten over it. Make sense?
Right, but come on. Have you ever lost an email? I mean, is it not there? If your life depended on finding an email, could you find it?
The 26,000 emails on my Gmail account probably
Right.
say how well I keep my archives.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned Gmail. Google archives everything. Everything is digitized. The NSA is able to know everybody we emailed to, what it was, and every phone call we've made. Lois Lerner can't find her emails. It's been gone. Now, the reason I bring up Google is you've been working on something. I don't want to speak out of turn, but you've told me that the story you broke on Mark Udall and the healthcare cancellations had to do with emails. There's more there, but you can't get it. Give me the background.
Right. Essentially, there was the one bureaucrat inside the State Division of Insurance. Her name was Jo Donlin, and she's the one that said, Udall's trying to trash our numbers, but I think he's wrong.
And Udall saying there weren't that many cancellations because this is a hot campaign issue. And so the Udall office, strong-armed Department of Health, said, hey, don't say there are that many. There's not 250,000 cancellations. There's just a few.
Right. So then this individual, Jo Donlin, there was supposed to, the Division of Insurance and their parent agency, they were supposed to conduct a panel to see whether or not she had been intimidated or bullied by Udall's office. Well, I went back and asked for Jo Donlin's emails for that day that the panel supposedly happened. Now, keep in mind, there's not a document that they have at all in regards to this panel, right?
Well, let's take one step back and just talk about the Freedom of Information laws. Here in Colorado, we have something called the Open Records Act. And so these things are public documents. Whenever government sends an email or sends a report, does anything, we get to look at it if we so choose, assuming it's not under a couple of classification personnel or a legal issue or executive session, things like that. So you ask for these emails, you do this all the time. It's your thing, man.
Right, and specifically in this example, I asked for Jo Donlin's emails for this day in January in which this panel was supposed to have happened, and there were no emails at all. None in her sent folder, none in her inbox, none in her deleted file. So this is where
for
a whole 4 days, actually.
So for 4 days, this lady didn't get an email. She didn't delete an email. She wasn't forwarded an email. Nothing exists from 4 days.
Well, if she deleted it, she deleted it, which is taking that second step. When you delete something, it goes to your trash can, and then you have to delete your trash can again. So what she did was she deleted. But this is where Google comes into the situation that you were talking about earlier. 2 years ago, the state moved to Google for Government, and you would think that with all the space they would have.
So Google takes care of their emails.
Just like Gmail does for my account, just like Michael's Gmail account, correct. Now, you have to buy some backup space, but it's really, really very cheap for 10 years of archiving. It's very cheap. And but still, I haven't even been able to get so much of an answer as to whether or not I can get deleted emails 30 days after the email may have been deleted in the first place.
All right. we have open records laws. This is so that people, left, right, middle, can keep an eye on government. And I understand government doesn't want people, this is what is so wonderful, is that the NSA can look at our emails, but government officials, no, we can't look at theirs. It's not a two-way street, apparently. Let's talk a little bit about Jim Martin. Who is this guy, and what happens with emails? Because this is not only a story about Jim Martin, but it really is a story about open records. So who's Jim Martin?
Jim Martin was the Regional 8 administrator for the EPA, and he was working under Lisa Jackson, the EPA administrator, who actually had been found out to be using her own private email address under the name Richard Windsor.
All right, so Section 8, I'm assuming, is Colorado.
It's Colorado and most of the western states,
All right,
yes.
so he's an EPA administrator, and there's a cabinet member who's the EPA administrator, and she is?
Lisa Jackson.
Lisa Jackson.
And this isn't just about Jim Martin, it's about state officials under the current administration. The Governor's Strategy Office, Alan Salazar, and Martha Rudolph at the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, and they were using both official addresses and unofficial email addresses to correspond back and forth with Jim Martin on ongoing legislation. They were asking for his input. Would you please come and talk to Governor Hickenlooper? And Martin responded in one of these email exchanges. Is it beneficial? Does it help or hurt? And this is ongoing legislation. This was a House bill that was under consideration by the legislature 2 years ago.
So let me kick that back to you. Make sure I'm following.
So this isn't just hey, let's have lunch kind of conversations.
You have Hickenlooper and his administration talking to the Section 8 director of the EPA, and that's a federal government official, and the teams are talking to each other about legislation. All right, well, that makes sense. I wouldn't want our governor to sign something without getting input and all the rest. And I'm sure there's good reasons to do it, but the question is, are these emails Cora-able?
They were off the record. Jim Martin was using a me.com email account. He wasn't using his EPA account to correspond with Alan Salazar and Martha Rudolph, and both of them claimed that they didn't use their accounts. They were just using it to get Google alerts. And our investigation showed that when we asked for Cora, they said those emails didn't exist, when we, in fact, from the Freedom of Information Act on the federal side, had those emails, so we knew that they existed.
Let me explain this in case folks at home are missing this. So here are these emails, and you use open records, and you say, "Hey, state government, I want to see them," and these people say, "There's nothing there," not knowing that you also had the same request on the federal level, and on the federal level, there they all were. So in other words, you caught a bunch of people lying that they didn't send emails.
Well, and they gave the response that the state agency wasn't responsible. They weren't custodians of the email because those were private, unofficial accounts, and also because, according to both agencies, they had a 30 or 60-day time frame, sunset horizon, saying either we encourage you to delete the emails or the emails will be automatically deleted. So they're out of the system. They're out of contact. And so, as I was mentioning to you earlier, we're looking at not the inability to even go back to this past legislative session and say, 30 or 60 days ago, what was going on in January, February, because we've already passed that horizon. So Cora, the Colorado Open Records Act, doesn't give us that kind of measure to go after those records because of these guidelines. And it's not against the law to use private email accounts in both of the,
Let me ask you about that part.
You have these conversations off the record, basically.
So in other words, you've got government officials, including the Hickenlooper administration and the Obama administration, using their private email addresses for official correspondence.
Yes, right? On ongoing legislation and coordination on events, and it wasn't just pleasantries.
Right, now, there's nothing illegal about that, except when we say, hey, can I see them? Isn't it amazing? They said they didn't exist over here, but when the Fed said, yeah, then they had to cough them up, not thinking that you guys are smart enough to go, we'll go to both sources and compare. This reminds me a little bit about Bill Ritter.
Yeah,
which was the Denver Post wanted to see his cell phone bills, and he said, private cell phone. And they could say, yeah, it's your private cell phone, but if you do government business, even on your private cell phone, the people have a right to see the records. Is the same thing true with email?
Well, what the court said is if you do business on your private cell phone, you don't get to see the records. Now, Governor Hickenlooper has agreed to make his public, but that's just an agreement that he has. He's not bound by the law to do that. So the Denver Post lost that suit all the way to the Supreme Court against Bill Ritter.
State Supreme Court.
Yes. So, but you're absolutely right that the concern about that case specifically was that it would remove all limiting factors, and so that exactly you could then go conduct state business on a completely personal email account, or if you just used your laptop and say, well, it's my laptop, but you can't. It's not a public record anymore. It's a private record because I generated the document with my private materials and my private accounts. That was the absolute concern with Denver Post v. Ritter, and I think that's what's emboldened these officials, at least at the state level, to do this. Now, I would say that I've recently obtained some emails from Roxanne White in which I asked for. And Roxanne White's the soon-to-be departing chief of staff for Governor Hickenlooper's office. But I asked for all emails on a certain day from government accounts and the private accounts, and they did hand some over from the private accounts.
But they don't have a legal responsibility to do so.
No, they don't.
So basically, if you want to have a conversation in a virtual smoke-filled back room, you just do it on your private email. So Hickenlooper's folks and Obama's folks can have these conversations via their private email accounts, and at least on the Colorado side, there's nothing you can do about it.
And Michael can speak to this more than I can, but I mean, this is an issue that got Lisa Jackson fired. I mean, this created enough pressure that Lisa Jackson stepped in.
Remind us, Lisa Jackson again
At
is.
the federal level, Lisa Jackson was the EPA overall administrator, so she was in charge of everything. Jim Martin was at the local level, the Region 8 level, and these emails, 30 or 60-day window. We work in public policy and investigative reporting, so we don't have, the luxury of just saying, oh, we know, 2 days after something happened to go back and look at it. We want to take a look back at the last legislative session, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 years ago, back to the beginning of the Hickenlooper administration, for example, and under a 30 or 60-day time frame, we can't get those
Just a
documents.
few seconds left. What did you find in those emails? What is it that Jim Martin said that was so great?
Hickenlooper was smitten with Lisa Jackson.
Smitten. Our governor is smitten with the EPA administrator. Good to know. And keep your eye on it. Boys, thank you. Keep up the good work. Listen for me on KHOW Radio. Check out independenceinstitute.org. See you next week.